You're very welcome back. Now, yesterday it was announced that before their next general election, the legal voting age will be lowered to just 16 years old across the UK.
Joining us now to discuss in studio is political correspondent with the Irish Times, Pat Leahy.
And also joining us live from London is journalist Enda Brady. Enda, we'll come to you first this morning. Now, this news broke yesterday, of course, that the voting age has been lowered to 16 in the UK. What prompted this move by the government?
I think there was a real concern about the turnout at the last election. It didn't even reach 60%. So the Prime Minister wanted to do something to try and drive up participation in democracy. It came as a surprise, I'll be frank. Yesterday, a lot of people were really caught in the hop by this. But the reason being, not a lot of people read the Labour manifesto a year ago when the campaign was on. It was clearly printed there in that manifesto. I think a lot of people will have looked at big ticket items like taxation, the economy, job, health, hospitals, that kind of stuff. But they didn't really pay much attention to it. So Starmer has driven this over the line yesterday. It will happen. Next general election here is in 4 years' time. So there are 12-year-olds today in England who will be voting in the next general election.
I know you said that there was some surprise yesterday when this was announced, but what has the reaction been across the board, and what have other parties been saying?
Well, a lot of opposition parties are not happy. Clearly, the Conservatives accusing Starmer of robbing the next election. And I think all the polling would indicate that 16 and 17-year-olds are probably not going to vote Conservative. So I think Starmer will be looking at these as votes that really could come his way. 1.6 million people, that's the numbers, by the way, 16 and 17-year-olds who will be of that age in 4 years' time if he lasts that long. 1.6 million young people will now be eligible to vote. So I think all of the polling would indicate that younger people are less likely to vote Conservative. Now, it's interesting, my 17-year-old son, Donica here, I spoke to him last night and I said, all the pupils in your class, how would they vote if there was an election tomorrow? And he said, oh, they'd mostly vote Reform. And that's Nigel Farage. And when you dig into it, the one politician who's quite big on social media and is on TikTok is Farage. So he has already seen this coming, and that's where the game will be played out for these young votes.
Indeed, on that point, I suppose this is an effort, obviously, to increase participation in elections, because I know particularly around the time of Brexit there was concerns about the voter turnout amongst the younger cohort. But on that point, particularly with the younger men, because they're not almost radicalised online, but there is that fear amongst certain quarters that this sort of thing will only benefit one type of voter and one type of party because of the way social media is going, Enda.
Yeah, there is a concern over that, but I think what you're likely to see now in the next, I would say, 18 months, you will see a lot of politicians joining various different social media platforms and trying to bring the narrative away from what we've seen here in the extremes and getting it into the centre ground. So that's a lot of votes to play for, 1.6 million. But look, they have to do something here because there's apathy about politics. You will hear people bemoaning Brexit still. And when you say to them, well, did you vote against it? And they'll say, I didn't bother. So it's the political apathy in the UK that Starmer is trying to address by doing this. And I think it will be fascinating to see what happens in the next few years. But look, it works in Scotland, it works in Wales, and now it's coming to England and the north of Ireland.
Enda Brady, thank you so much for joining us this morning from London. Pat, we'll move on to yourself. So, Youth Work Ireland has warned that Ireland is in danger of becoming an outlier as momentum grows around the world to lower the voting age for 16 and 17-year-olds. How likely do you think it is that we'll see Ireland following suit here?
I don't think it's that likely in the short term. As Enda mentioned there, you know, anyone who's surprised by this maybe hasn't read the Labour manifesto. It's not in the programme for government, so, you know, the way things work here, government comes together, parties come together after an election, they agree a programme for government, usually based on their manifesto. You sometimes get extraneous things into it. So it's not on current government's agenda. It is favoured by Sinn Féin, it's favoured by Labour, some of the other opposition parties. So perhaps after the next election, you could see it coming on the agenda here. But right now, looking ahead, we've an election due here in the end of 2029. It's unlikely to happen before then.
Pat, but is there an appetite for it in this country? And if so, what impact do you think it would have? We've heard there about anecdotally from Enda about maybe it being skewed towards reform over there with the younger vote. Do you think something like that could happen here, or are youth a little bit more sensible? Fingers crossed.
Well, I mean, when I heard the idea, I was tempted to think, well, it's a great idea if only we could get them out of bed to vote, you know. But having some experience with teenagers myself, I suppose there's kind of two things you have to consider. First of all, is this a good idea on its own merits? And after that, people then like me can maybe try and figure out who benefits from it. I think a lot of politicians might tend to see, does this benefit me? Does this benefit my party? And they'll form their judgment as to whether whether it's a good idea on the basis of whether it benefits them or not. There is some evidence, and you know, I mean, obviously, Youth Work Ireland, with a name like that, you would expect them to advocate for votes for younger people. The evidence around the place is pretty mixed. It's in Wales, it's in Scotland, Austria has done it. There's some evidence that suggests that it tends to favour the parties of the extreme right, extreme left. And if anecdotally what Enda is saying about reform there and them being potential beneficiaries in the UK, maybe that bears it out. But in a way, I think that's sort of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, but I suppose sometimes if you do look at it, I mean, we see student protests around the world. I mean, the younger generations tend to, as you said, rightly, be more extreme, be it right or left, and maybe in direct opposition to what their parents might vote as well. You know, there does seem to be a kind of pushback in some way like that as well, does there not?
Well, I suppose if a significant element in our electoral politics is, you know, the centrist dad, the opposite of the centrist dad maybe is the radicalised teen. And I suppose if you extend, you know, your voting age here, you have more radicalised teens. I mean, the evidence as to whether it drives turnout, and Enda mentioned this as a measure to increase voter turnout, is kind of pretty mixed, to be honest. So it worked for a while in Scotland in driving turnout, much less so in Wales. The idea behind it, I suppose, is that you establish a habit of voting and an engagement with the democratic and political process in people at a younger age, and that therefore they are more likely to continue to vote as they get older. But the evidence is not conclusive on it from international studies, to be honest.
This would be a change to the Constitution, so this would require a referendum if we were to do this, wouldn't it? That's
a really good point. So our system is different to the UK in that in the UK Parliament is sovereign, the Parliament passes an act and then it's the law. Here we have a written constitution, so anything that Parliament does must be in accordance with the Constitution. And yes, that would require, first of all, an act of the Oireachtas here to go through the Dáil and Seanad, and then it would require a referendum. How would that go? I'm not aware of any polling done on it. No doubt there'll probably be some polling done on it after the British announcement. But if you think back, I mean, I think it was 10, 12 years ago or so, there was a referendum. You can't become president unless you're over 35. Yes. And there was a referendum to change that, and it was overwhelmingly defeated. So I don't think it's an open and shut case here as to whether it would pass or not.
Especially people voting in said referendum would all be over 18 anyway.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Pat Leahy, political editor with the Irish Times, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. And we won't talk about hurling just yet, because we might fight like we did a little.
Do let us know.
Wearing blue.
He is, anyway. Yeah, very intentional. Do let us know what you think of our discussion today. Do you think the voting age should be lowered in Ireland to 16 or 17? 0896 111 111, or scan the QR code.
Now, after the break, we'll be discussing some of the other stories making your morning paper. See you in a few.